Let's say you had you didn't qualify for a visa because you had a health condition or an ineligibility. So they decided to, rather than have you apply for a visa and get a waiver, you'd shortcut it by getting parole.
Who grants this parole?
It was originally the Attorney General had the power, and that devolved after the Homeland Security Act to the Secretary of Homeland Security. So in theory, Mayorkas should have been looking at every one of these cases, or at least someone very senior that he delegated, going, yes to that one. Okay, this guy's going to testify at Al Capone's trial, and if he's not there as a witness, Al Capone walks free, we're going to parole him in. But instead, they used it to parole in 30,000 people a month from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Now, what's that? That's communist dictatorship, failed state, communist dictatorship, communist dictatorship. So they were paroling in 30,000 people a month, basically on their say-so, trusting their word.
All right, guys. I've been thinking about this all week. All of these actions that President Trump have been doing, the symbolic things, the actual roundups, it just shows you that leadership matters. If your priorities are straight and you want to secure the border, all that nonsense we got from President Biden about, he couldn't do anything was not true. He can do a lot. And we're going to go through that today because there's a lot to break down. The roundups, the deportations, the signals, the closing the CBP1 app, remain in Mexico policy, but also birthright citizenship. Is it legal or not? We've got a lot to get to because the president's also directing troops to the border. So we're going to get into that. Simon Hankinson, he's the director of the Center for Border Security at the Heritage Foundation. He's going to join us. And then later in the show, Tina Anderson, our good friend, is going to be back, give us a little quick update on the MAHA agenda. Before we get into that, I want to just tell you, if you are the person that runs a company, you're in charge of the employees or you're the finance person and you have to deal with expense accounts and receipts and all the accounts payable, then you want to do yourself a huge favor and get a ramp card. This is what it looks like. It looks like a regular old Visa card. But the cool thing about Ramp is that they issue both virtual and physical cards. It is the game-changing, time-saving, money-saving corporate card and expense management software system that is going to revolutionize how you do business. You're not going to have to chase your employees around trying to collect receipts. It does it all electronically. It categorizes the expenses in real time. You can set limits with different employees for different things. It's easy to use. It's easy to get started. You can start making payments in less than 15 minutes once you get up and running, no matter the size of your company, whether it's 5 employees or 5,000. And right now you get $250 when you join Ramp. So go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer, and take a look at what I'm talking about. You will not regret this. Cards are issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and condition apply. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about real quickly is if you have made wellness or get back in shape part of your 2025 resolution, then I've got the solution for you. No company in America aligns more with the Make America Healthy Again movement than PhD Weight Loss. This is a nutrition company that tackles the real problem. As Kamala Harris would say, the root of the problem. The reality is there's a ton of fad diets out there. I've tried them all. Some have worked, but then they don't. And when I saw how much my friend Seb Gorka had lost weight-wise and how well he was looking, I saw his transformation, and he told me that he had hooked up and started using the My PhD weight loss program. So I called them. I signed up for the program. People have said to me, oh, you can see it in your face. I'm down a few pounds. They make it so easy because they give you a plan to lose the weight and then to maintain the weight. You have weekly check-ins with a nutritionist that keep you accountable and that help you along the way. It all starts with a simple call. Call PhD Weight Loss at 864-644-1900. Tell them I sent you. Or if you just want to do it online, go to myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. It's time to be healthy again. Let's make it a priority. And the people who can help you do that are the folks at PhD Weight Loss. Without further ado, I want to bring in Simon Hankinson. He is the director of the Center for Border Security and Immigration at the Heritage Foundation, a leading expert in this, and has worked all around the world on issues of immigration and for our government. He knows this issue like no one else. Without further ado, Simon Hankinson. Simon, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I got to think that if you're an immigration and border kind of guy, that you've got to be like, like ecstatic in the last few days. Like, this has been crazy.
Well, I guess it depends on which side of the issue you're on. I mean, there's some immigration and border guys who are, weeping in their tea right now. But if you are a conservative or someone who believes in the rule of law, or someone who believes in legal immigration, someone who believes in the Constitution, which says that it's Congress who sets the rules and the executive branch and the president who have to carry them out, then yes, this has been a really good week. We've seen Monday a flurry of executive orders. I would say like I've never seen before, but it seems to be the pattern now that day one, you get this barrage of executive orders undoing what the last guy did. But in this case, I think these were really badly needed corrections to a situation that had gotten so far out of hand that not only did it propel Trump into the White House, but I think even the Democratic Party is realizing they might need to do some revision.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, announced Wednesday that the president was sending at least 1,500 troops to the border. Just from is that do you think a real show of strength? Is 1,500 enough? I you know what I mean? Like, I was just trying to figure it out, because is this more like a show of force? Like, hey, we're sending our military down there, and I just knowing how big and vast the border is that actually impactful?
Well, the president did declare a national emergency and an invasion at the southern border, which we've not seen before, and which does open up all kinds of resources and changes the law in a way that makes it easier to use federal resources. Now, yeah, 1,500 guys is not going to make a huge difference depending on what their mission is. So I would suspect that this is the first of many deployments, and yes, probably made early on to make the point that we're going to use all available resources. I've been down there to the border 5 times now, 4 or 5 times to the southern border and once to the north. And in the southern border, you see a lot of Texas National Guard in particular that are there to try to supplement the Border Patrol. But unfortunately, under the last administration, all they could really do was just, help gather luggage and shepherd people towards the buses where they would take them to these processing centers and then release them. And I would hope that this deployment and future deployments of the military is going to be able to do things that are more constructive in stopping people from actually entering illegally in the first place.
It's funny when you said the visit to the northern border. It got me thinking, like, do we have a big problem at the northern border with Canada, or is that pretty secure?
We have a problem. I would call it a big problem. Of course, everything is dwarfed by the southern border just in terms of numbers. But if you look at the numbers on the northern border, it used to be rare to see someone cross illegally and be on the terrorist watch list. And now there were hundreds last year. And if you look at the overall monthly numbers, they've been going up. I think it was close to 200,000 last year. And the monthly totals are much, much higher than they have been before. And the problem is this border is physically the easiest and the weakest, the easiest to cross and the weakest that we have compared to the southern. So the potential downside is really huge. The numbers right now, I think last year there were 23,000 people caught trying to enter the U.S. illegally by the Border Patrol coming from Canada, and about 1,000 heading the other way. But that's not all the encounters. The people who show up at the port of entry and don't have a visa or are trying to claim asylum or being paroled in. So the potential downside is really huge, especially when you consider that the Canadians have a real problem on their hands of illegal immigration and people overstaying visas, and the number of officers per mile up there is incredibly low.
So when you say potential downside, do you mean what? Explain what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, let's just say you're a bad guy and you want to get into the U.S.
Yeah.
The last 4 years, you've had a bunch of different options. If you are a bad guy known to the U.S., like let's say you're someone from Mexico who's been deported 5 times before because you've committed crimes, but you have a family you want to get back to, you'd probably sneak in as a gotaway. because there are, if you encounter Border Patrol, they're going to run your fingerprints eventually, maybe figure out that you have a record. You could be detained. You could even be deported, which did happen, sometimes in the last administration. Or if you had no record, let's say you're a gangbanger with Tren de Aragua and you want to come in to join your crew in New York City, you have no criminal record in the United States. You give them a fake name, fake date of birth, you threw away all your papers, they'll release you into the country, and you're good to go until you commit a crime. But if the Trump administration cracks down on that insanity on the southern border, it's going to become more attractive to try to sneak through. And the northern border is, last time I was there in New York State, I mean, you just look out and it's just flat as a pancake. There's huge lakes on there. There's Indian reservations where it's much harder to get the federal government assets and to get local cooperation. And really, I just watched cars drive back and forth with absolutely no one stopping them. I saw footprints of groups that had crossed over that day. And there were actually organized and still are organized smugglers who fly people in from India or even from Mexico until they stop giving them free visas. And they just drive them down to the border and say, okay, walk over there and you'll meet the Uber, on the other side. So that's a real liability.
Yeah, I'm glad you called this out, because I've been up there, and to your point, like there's no like fence. There's nothing. I mean, you just walk into Canada. And I agree with you. At some point, it's like whack-a-mole. We close the southern border, and they'll just start flying them into Canada and driving down, or walking down, or boating across. But that being said, I think clearly the biggest influx is from our southern border. It's funny. The president at the beginning of the week got lectured by that woke bishop, who was and what I pointed out on the show, and you tell me, is that I felt like it was this gaslighting moment where she said something to the effect of, all immigrants aren't criminals. And it's like, wait a second, we're all immigrants. If you're not a Native American, then you're an immigrant, right? The president, as I pointed out on the show the other day, is married to an immigrant. Like, we get it. And therefore, like the idea of trying to gaslight us by making it seem like the folks on the right are against immigration is not true. We're against illegal immigration.
Yeah, I mean, we can say this until we're blue in the face, but I think we're up against a sort of globalist woke ideology that doesn't believe in borders. The so-called abolitionists, not the kind that abolished slavery a century and a half ago, but the ones today that believe in abolishing what they call the carceral state. In other words, the entire criminal justice system. They fundamentally believe, as a political ideology, that there should be no borders, that anyone in any country in the world has the right to live wherever they want. Now, I am a nationalist. I like my nation. If you ask a French person, is France better than Germany? They probably would say yes, even though maybe they like Germany. You ask most people from most countries, they tend to like their country more than others. And each country gets to decide who comes in and what the rules are. And I think that bishop was sort of demonstrating that other ideology where, there is simply no reason, no legitimate reason by which we as a country could say to a person from another country that we respect you, we respect your culture, we have nothing against you as a person, but we have a legal immigration system and it is capped at 1 million a year, whatever it is, whatever Congress wants it to be. And after that, I'm sorry, you can't come in, just like you can't get into a bar when they hit their capacity under the fire code. Or, I can't go into your house without an invitation from you or else I'm trespassing. But
Right.
People don't seem to understand that.
Well, the other thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the expert in this, but aren't like Mexico and Canada's immigration rules a lot stricter than ours?
Well, Canada's used to be about equivalent to ours. When I was doing visas in India in my first consular tour in the Foreign Service, we used to consider a Canadian visa roughly equivalent to a U.S. In other words, that the bar for them was about as high. I would say they've gotten a lot slacker, particularly under Trudeau, where, for example, they were letting Mexicans in without a visa. And, many Mexicans are wealthy and they're professionals and they're good travelers and they're going to come and do their thing as tourists or business people and go home. But there's also a lot of poverty in Mexico and people were taking advantage of it to come in on, package deals with smugglers and come down to the U.S. border. They were also making it really easy for people from India and Bangladesh. And again, I've lived in India. There are very wealthy people there, but there's also an extraordinary amount of poverty, 1.4 billion people of whom, maybe half are living on on what Americans couldn't possibly live on. So they had to tighten their standards. They actually started asking Mexicans for visas back in, I want to say, March of last year. And they've actually tightened up on their issuances of Bangladesh and Indian visas. Now, Mexico, yeah, they don't just let anybody from anywhere in the world come and live in Mexico. They have, in the past few years, taken an enormous number of asylum applicants because so many of them are passing through on the way to the U.S. Now, most of them aren't going to stay in Mexico. They're just doing it to go through the formality. But there are hundreds of thousands of people that in the past, say, 5 years have chosen to move to Mexico. So I think both Mexico and Canada need to get tougher on their own borders so that we don't have to do all the heavy lifting.
All right, guys, hate to interrupt this conversation. A great friend of mine, Leo Grillo, has done amazing work for animals in need. Leo founded Delta Rescue. And if you go to deltarescue.org, you can see what I'm talking about. It is the world's largest no-kill sanctuary, not a shelter, a sanctuary. Now, if you go to the website and you see the videos that I'm talking about, you'll realize something. They're outside the LA area. Okay. So obviously they had their own challenges, which Leo, I talked to him about this the other day. That guy is unreal. He was so ready for this fire. I think Leo should be mayor, but that's a whole nother story. But, a lot of people when they're dealing with the crisis out there and the tragedy that's happened have lost or abandoned their own animals. This is where Delta Rescue comes in. I made a personal donation last week, and I would ask you to think about doing that, please. Go to deltarescue.org, make a donation, because he doesn't take government money. This is all run because of how Leo does business. If you're an animal lover, they give them the nutrition, the veterinary care, everything that they need for abandoned and mistreated animals. All sorts of animals. The videos tell the story. Go to deltarescue.org, make a contribution. And by the way, when you're there, if you're a real animal lover, look at that estate planning kit and think about whether you've got an old 401k or stocks that maybe you could make part of your legacy and help Delta Rescue out so it can sustain itself. All right, back to the conversation with Simon. The president directed the Department of Defense to make homeland security a core mission. How important is that?
I think it's going to help reorient them to that mission. I mean, obviously, their job is to defend the country, to defend the borders. The Coast Guard has done a lot of work in interdicting people crossing over illegally into the United States or trying to by sea. I don't think what you're going to hear on the left is this sort of panic about, we're using the military to beat up people on the Rio Grande and such. And that's not what we're talking about. But logistically, the Department of Defense has airlift capacity, buses, construction. They have logistical capacity, engineers that no one else has. And so that's going to be able to add capacity to what the Department of Homeland Security has and really be a force multiplier.
Of all the things that President Trump has done this week, is there something that he has done or said that rises to the top in your opinion of, okay, by doing that, that's really going to have a discernible effect?
I'm going to have to take more than one because,
Okay.
I was reading these executive orders and I kind of I have a little cheat sheet here of like 30 things. And honestly, if you took the 170 articles I've written in the past couple of years and you took out the part where I said, Biden should stop doing this or should do this or the next president should do this, that's the wish list right there. But I would say the three things that would really make a difference and will make a difference are, one, reinstating Remain in Mexico, the migrant protection protocols, where you don't let someone from, say, the Punjab fly to Nicaragua, take a bus up to Mexico, and then know that they're going to be released into the country until their process is finished, which could be a year, 5 years, or never. You let them know that they will have to wait in Mexico until that process is concluded, and then they get told whether they can stay or go. They know that they're economic migrants. They're here looking for a job. They're not actually refugees under our law. And so some of them are not going to spend the money that it takes to get here and do that. Another one would be getting rid of parole programs that the Biden administration made up out of whole cloth. There is a statute, there is a section of the Immigration Act that says you can parole people in, that's the Secretary of Homeland Security, but it was meant to be used very rarely. I think under Bush, it was like a couple hundred times a year for very specific, case by case, what they call significant public benefit of the United States, humanitarian cases. There was 30,000 a month.
Say the word again. Did you say to parole them?
Yeah, to parole.
What does that mean?
Well, so under immigration law, you can't come into the U.S. unless you have a visa. That's the basic rule. You have to go to a consulate, an embassy, and apply for a visa, either immigrant, non-immigrant. You're going to go to Disney World, you're going to come for business, you're going to do whatever, you have to have a visa. If you don't have a visa, then you show up at the border, we say, I'm sorry, you can't come in. Parole is this one exception that they built into the 1952 Immigration Nationality Act as, it's a loophole that's discretionary, that if you live in a country where you can trust your leaders to use their discretion wisely, you can afford to have discretionary powers. If, unfortunately, you live in a time when that power is abused, it is a potential massive liability. So this power that was in there, and it was refined in '96 to say you can't use this as a mass countrywide for classes of people to avoid the refugee system. It's only to be used. And they gave a couple examples of, like, let's say you had to give a kidney and you're the only match in the world, but for whatever reason you can't get a visa. You get paroled in it's outside the visa system. You're not technically admitted. You're sort of like, we're going to pretend that you're not here just for a certain amount of time and give you this quasi status. And so, Congress tried to restrain it by saying it has to be, on a case-by-case basis, temporary, for the significant public benefit, and so on. But Biden decided—
I don't understand. I mean, I'm sorry. I just don't get this. So, let's say that I have, to use your example, I have a kidney match and you're the only person, and whatever, right? So why can't I still just apply for a visa and get in? I don't understand. Why do we need this?
You should, and in most cases you can. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you couldn't get to the embassy in time because there was no time, or the embassy was closed, or their visa machines were down. I'm thinking really out of the box ideas here, or possibly, let's say, you had you didn't qualify for a visa because you had a health condition or an ineligibility. So they decided to, rather than have you apply for a visa and get a waiver, you'd shortcut it by getting parole. That's— it really isn't—
Who grants this parole?
It was originally the Attorney General had the power, and that devolved after the Homeland Security Act to the Secretary of Homeland Security. So in theory, Mayorkas should have been looking at every one of these cases, or at least someone very senior that he delegated, going, yes to that one. Okay, this guy's going to testify at Al Capone's trial, and if he's not there as a witness, Al Capone walks free, we're going to parole him in. But instead, they used it to parole in 30,000 people a month from Cuba, Haiti— a month from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Now, what's that? That's communist dictatorship, failed state, communist dictatorship, communist dictatorship. So these are four places where, if we were to call up and say, hey, we have this guy at the border, he says his name's Joe Smith, born January 1st, 1980. Can you verify that, and can you give us his criminal history? They're not going to take our phone call, and they're not going to tell us. So they were paroling in 30,000 people a month, basically on their say-so, trusting their word. And they added another 1,450, I think it was, a day from all over the world. And some of these guys were coming in, there was some reporting out of the Center for Immigration Studies. They were coming in from Iceland, France, Italy, Germany. So there were people from Afghanistan, from Africa, from Asia, from wherever, who were already settled in some other country that they should have claimed asylum in, and maybe already had asylum. But we were allowing that many of them to fly in. I mean, the whole thing was completely insane. Between those two parole programs, you're talking about 70,000 people a month that were being allowed into the country.
Which, I didn't take math in college, but you're almost at 1 million.
Yeah.
Right. So just posit me this, why?
I've always said there were three basic reasons why the Biden administration did this. The first is ideology. If you look at you got the Democratic Party's got a sort of a left and a right. And on the far left of the Democratic Party, they don't believe in borders. They're globalists. They believe in this international right to migrate. Now, I don't know if they're the majority of the party, but they were definitely the ones wearing the pants and in charge when Biden was in office. That's one thing. They just don't believe in borders. They want to abolish all of it: ICE, courts, jails, everything else. And then you've got extortion, which is, look, if we bring in 10 million people, then what are they going to do, right? They're really going to deport them all. So then we've got a leverage chip. We've got a bargaining chip. We can turn to the Republicans and say, well, now what are you going to do? Let's make a deal, amnesty in exchange for something else. And the third is, it's really cynical. It's electoral advantage.
That's it. That's the one I like.
I mean, if you do the census and you count illegal aliens, which they do, then a state like California gets more votes than they should in Congress, more seats in the House. Same with Illinois, New York, Massachusetts. Now, what do those places have in common? They're all Democrat voting blue states.
And sanctuary, right?
And many of them have sanctuary, right, jurisdictions where they try not to kick people out. And there was a book written back in 2003 called, I think, The Coming Democratic Majority. And there was definitely this feeling at the heart of the Democratic Party that everybody coming in, all the Latinx coming in from Central, South, and Latin America would be voting Democrat for the rest of their lives. I think they had a rude awakening in the last election because we did see Trump win a much larger share of the Hispanic vote. The Rio Grande Valley in Texas, which is like 95% Hispanic, but many of these families have been here, much longer than mine. Of course, I'm an immigrant, but for generations, they voted for Republicans because they can see the damage that's done to their lives and their land and their communities from mass illegal migration. So it's a cynical combination of those three reasons is why I would say they supported open borders.
Yeah. Number three has been what I've always believed, right? You bring these people here, you let them in, you give them a driver's license. I mean, like, whether or not it's legal or not, you eventually are going to get them to vote for you. That's always been the belief that I have. Let me ask you this. I don't know what the mix is, 60-40, 70-30, but I think immigration is twofold. One, it's the policy, like what President Trump's doing, and hopefully a congressional fix that matches it to get everything straight, because that's the excuse, right? So we need Congress. We need to fix the system too. So we need to, okay. But I think that whatever it is, 30 or 40% is messaging. When the Biden administration said, when Kamala Harris goes, don't come, but winks and nods, and you tell them, by the way, when you don't come, but if you do, I'm going to give you a hotel room, a cell phone, I'll Venmo you some cash. There you go. Oh, okay, we're coming. I think similarly, when President Trump signs all these orders, does remain in Mexico, sends troops to the border, that it sends a signal to the cartels and everyone else, it's not worth it. Do I have it right, or is it much smaller of a percentage that signal matters?
I don't know about the percentage, but you have it exactly right. What counts for people who are trying to migrate illegally is, what are the odds of them getting in? If you're spending $10,000 to come from India or $10,000 to come from Nigeria or China illegally into Latin America and then work your way up to the U.S. border, you want to know you got at least a 50-50 shot of getting in. I mean, some of these people are borrowing for years to try to make the money to come in. I remember back in the 80s, the Chinese on the Golden Venture were supposed to be paying like $50,000 a head. It's gone down since then, but it's still substantial money for them. So the moment the message gets out that your chances have gone down and you may get in, but there's a pretty good chance you're going to have to remain in Mexico and that your case will be fairly adjudicated, but the answer will be, no, I'm sorry, you're not a refugee. And it's possible that if you've been here illegally already or you've been deported already and you get caught, you might actually have to do jail time and then get deported. At the speed of WhatsApp and Signal and TikTok or whatever they use, that is already back in the home village in Fujian or in Jalandhar, and people will make rational choices. They're rational actors. And that's why, if you're really fleeing for your life, for safety, for asylum, what are you going to do? You're going to claim asylum in the first safe country you get to, right over the border, or the first country, where they're not shooting at you. But that's not what people do. They fly into Latin America. They go through 3 or 4 countries, including Mexico, most of which is pretty safe, even though obviously there's parts of it that are under the cartel control. But they don't do that. They come to the United States because they're looking for work. So yeah, I think you're right. It is about messaging. And that was exactly what happened under Biden. Yeah, occasionally they would say something ridiculous like, don't come because there's a chance that you might be removed if blah, blah, blah. But all they had to do was look at the social media and see that, out of their 100 friends who tried it, 99 got in and only one guy got unlucky for some reason. And then they just follow that.
One of the things that President Trump did is declare the end of birthright citizenship. The idea that if you're born here, you're automatically a citizen, because I think a lot of people, not worried, but also saw that people were literally flying into the country to have a child that then was, technically a citizen and help them. So I want you to sort of break this down in two ways. One, how big of a problem is what I just described? And two, do you think, I'm not a lawyer, and I've heard a lot of people say that it's in the Constitution, therefore you can't do anything. Do you subscribe to that philosophy?
Well, we have some great scholars at Heritage, Amy Swear and Hans von Spakovsky. I think those are the two that I remember most recently writing about this, making a very good argument that the 14th Amendment has just been interpreted wrongly for a long time. Because up until maybe 150 years ago, it wasn't interpreted that way. It clearly says
really?
that. Well, that's what they argue.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
That if it says born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now that's the argument there. That's the legal words that need to be parsed. We already have in U.S. law, if you are born and your parents are diplomats in the United States, you don't get citizenship.
Yes.
Right.
Agreed.
Because you're considered not to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Well, the argument could easily be made, and has been made, that if you're a tourist, for example, I'll give you some extreme examples, but this happens. There are hundreds of thousands of babies born every year to people who should not be here. Some of them cross over land from Mexico. That's been going on for generations. But you have package tour programs now where you can fly from China or from Nigeria or Russia into LA, well, probably not LA anymore, but you go to some, nice city with a good hospital, private hospital. They give you shopping trips and, your meals are catered and you've got a swimming pool and a spa and whatever. You have your baby, have a nice vacation and go home. That baby is an American citizen with all the rights and privileges, none of the duties and responsibilities. And you can live in China for the rest of, till they're 18 and they can come back, go to college, or they can get a job, no obstacles. A more extreme example, let's say you have two guys, one of them in France and one of them in Spain, who want to have a baby. So they contract to buy an egg and a sperm from two donors anywhere in the world, and they ship them into a lab in Illinois. And then they find a woman who may or may not be an American citizen, let's say she's not, to be the carrier. And they combine the ingredients in the lab, and this woman gives birth to a baby. And that baby automatically becomes an American citizen under the 14th Amendment in the current interpretation. Now, that baby has no biological parent who's an American citizen, no ancestral roots to the United States, and no biological connection to anybody who has ever been to America other than the mother who is acting as the vessel. Now, it is an extreme example, but it doesn't seem to me at all rational that we have a system.
Do you know for a fact that that's happened?
Well, we've actually done some reporting on this, and it is, yes, it's not common, but there are lots of people who contract for babies to be born by surrogate mothers, sometimes with their ingredients, but sometimes not.
That is literally mind-blowing. I mean, when you start going down these rabbit holes. So, I guess that answers the second part of the question, though, is that by various means, this is a significant enough problem that we need to address it.
I think it's a significant problem. I mean, I've seen numbers in the hundreds of thousands per year. I don't know exactly what the number is, but the number of babies born to mothers who are illegally in the United States or here on very short-term visas is really high. And of course, it's not just the children themselves, but they can later sponsor, as long as they've lived here a certain amount of time, they can sponsor all of their relatives. So I think what we've done is we've cheapened citizenship. Some of us have to really work for it. Well, some people are born here, but some immigrants who come through legally have to really jump through hoops. And then we give it away on the back end, and we ask absolutely nothing in return. And I think that's a mistake.
We got a lot of people, Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller. Who are the other players that we don't know that you're excited are going to be leading key agencies within that have jurisdiction?
Well, you just named them all. You beat me to it. USCIS, I haven't heard who they're putting there, but that's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Customs and Border Protection, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Those are the three arms of the Department of Homeland Security who'll be working for Kristi Noem, and obviously collaborating closely with Tom Homan, who will be the policy czar at the White House. But you really have to go down into those agencies too. I know a lot of working people at ICE. They've got some great people. They've been led by political activists who've really undermined their work for the past few years. I think it's probably true of CBP too. They've been told to, hand out bottles of water and diapers in a tent, processing people in, rather than trying to make sure people are safe and vetting them either at the Office of Foreign Operations in ports of entry or as Border Patrol between ports of entry. And I've been down there, like I said, many times. And the last time I was there in Texas, we spoke to some Border Patrol agents, and one of them was a guy, we couldn't have been more than 30, 35 years old tops. And I said, what's it like? And he was supervising. They just found a group of like 50 people, and all they were going to do was wait for a bus to come, put them in the bus, knowing that they would all be released into the country. And he said, it's really hard. It's really hard to get up every day and come to work, because he was not doing the job that he had sworn an oath to do and that he'd signed up to do. So we have to have not just good leadership, which I think we have in Kristi Noem and Tom Homan, but we need to put people who are energized and committed to the mission pretty far down the chain.
Tom Homan did this interview that I want to play for you real quick, just show you a clip of it, because obviously day one, President shut down that CBP One app, and the results were stunning. Let me play this for you just to give you a sense of what they're talking about has already happened.
Absolutely. Look, the greatest president in my lifetime, he's back. Because in 2 days, last 24 hours, total apprehensions on the southwest border, 766. Compare that to the 10 to 12,000 Biden had at one time. CBP 1 releases, 0. CHNV, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela releases, 0. Total of 766 across the entire southwest border. That is a game changer.
They're getting results right off the bat.
Yeah, one of the hardest things to swallow for anyone who cares about this issue. And, I've probably done 50 to 100,000 visa interviews in my time, and I've done my best to enforce the law and to treat people with respect, but to make decisions that are based on our rule of law. Watching the southwest border just become wide open. They say it wasn't, but even Mayorkas admitted they released 85% of people that they apprehended, they say, at the border, arrested technically, were gone within a couple of days. And then this extra 70,000 through the parole programs. And I didn't mention a couple other parole programs that would add to that, and the gotaways. So they've pretended the whole time that, we need more resources. We don't have the laws. We don't have this. We can't do it. It's beyond our control. Earthquakes, hurricanes, blah, blah, blah. But what we've demonstrated in the past 2 days, and what Tom said, nailed it, is that it can be done. 0 admissions under the parole programs, not a one. And before, like I said, it was about 2,000 a day. And on the border, 760. I think the worst day last year was like 15,000 in one single day. So this is miraculous change.
Game changer. Before I let you go, the last thing, I was noticing one of your tweets, and I still call them tweets. You sent out one of your colleague Mike Gonzalez's stories from the Daily Signal about ending public funding for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting by saying bye-bye Big Bird. This is like a passion project of mine, because I used to deal with this back on the House Budget Committee. No one realizes that Big Bird is a millionaire. Big Bird is not part of PBS. They contract with the Children's Television Network to buy that show to put on public television. The Children's Television Network makes millions and millions of dollars licensing products and merch that kids buy dolls, Big Bird, this. And this is insane. I think I'm so glad like that they're starting to become a wave to call light to shine light on how ridiculous some of the spending is that we have.
Look, I grew up on public television, and there are a lot of shows that I like, and those shows will survive because people will want to watch them and they'll pay for them. What I can't take is that, NPR, which was always, left of center, in the past 5 years, maybe longer, it's become absolutely unlistenable. You turn on the radio, and within 5 seconds, you're getting a lecture from a leftist point of view. And if they are a national network, they need to provide some balanced coverage. They need to have experts from both sides, and they can't be selling a woke agenda. If they want to do that, they should do what you do and make a living by providing a product that people can either buy or not buy, and not 100%. On my dime.
100%. Simon, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. What an amazing insight that he provided. The work of heritage is so critical right now. Next, I want to wrap up the week talking about where we are with the big issues in the Make America Healthy Again debate and how this administration is changing something. No one better right now to talk about this than our old friend Tina Anderson. She is the founder of Just Thrive Health. Tina, come on in. Tina, good to see you. How you doing?
Great, Sean. How are you?
I think my gut health is getting better and better and better for a million reasons, probably a lot because of the probiotics that from Just Thrive, but also just because there's a lot of good stuff going on. The thing that I have been fascinated by in the last couple months is so many of these things on the wellness agenda that are sort of a big part of the MAHA agenda, the Make America Healthy Again agenda. The news just suddenly comes out. Like the other day, it was red dye number 3. Mm-hmm. It is really bad for you, and we're going to ban it. And the FDA just does it. And it's like we're mainstreaming things. So for years, RFK and others have been saying, hey, this is bad for us. And everyone said, you're nuts. And then one day they go, poof, you're right. And no one says anything.
Yeah. Isn't it so exciting? I mean, this is, for me personally, this is so exciting that finally we have somebody listening to our cries for help to try to make America healthy again. I mean, this has been something that we have been, from Just Thrive, have been screaming from the rooftops of like, let's take control of our health. Let's make sure we know what's going into our body. And we know, red dye number 3 has been banned from cosmetics for almost 35 years. So we couldn't put it on our lipstick, but yet we could put it in our foods, which are being literally marketed to our kids and children. So there is just such an exciting momentum going on right now that health is at the forefront of so many conversations. I don't remember in my lifetime talking about, health and wellness in a political campaign. So it's just, for me, I'm excited to see people taking control of their health. It's something that we've been passionate about. And I'm so happy to see that red dye number 3 will be banned from foods that are being marketed to our children.
Yesterday evening, there's a story that pops out in one of the newsletters. It was a Washington Post story that talks about how ultra-processed foods are this is like your wheelhouse. It's like ultra-processed foods are affecting our gut and our whatever and affecting our sleep, which is, by the way, one of the things you've always told me about like a good probiotic, which is everything stems from this. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you guys, I don't know, there's two sides to the coin. There's the Tina side, which is positive, like, hey, I'm excited that we're finally talking about these things. And then there's the Sean side of the coin, which is, how have you guys told everyone that they were gaslit everyone for years? And now suddenly you're just going, oh yeah, ultra processed food, it's really bad for your stomach and everything.
Yeah, I know it's really hard to wrap our heads around this because I think we've always kind of thought, well, the government is protecting us. That's why we have entities, and organizations to be protecting us within the government. And yet we haven't been protected. And, all I could say is better late than never. I'm more encouraged than I am discouraged right now because it's just, it is obviously discouraging. The glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup that is literally being sprayed all over our crops, which when we're going to eat an apple or going to get some asparagus, we're trying to make all these healthy choices. And yet it's sprayed with glyphosate. And we know that glyphosate is a probable carcinogen and it is literally wreaking havoc on our gut. And yet it's all over the place. So yes, it is it is discouraging that we've been dealing with this for so many years. And it's why I feel like our children have epidemic levels of allergies. Allergies, I didn't see this with my kids or with myself when I was a kid, but now we see obviously epidemic levels of allergies going on. And it's because of these glyphosates that are being sprayed all over our food supply, and we're consuming them on a regular basis. So I'm discouraged that this has happened, but I'm encouraged that finally there is some true change that's going to be happening in this nation.
If you could advise the MAHA leadership team, whether it's RFK or Oz, McClarty, and they said, all right, Tina, the FDA banned red dye 3. We're starting to get the joke on ultra processed foods. What are the other top 2-3 issues that we should attack right off the bat?
Well, I do think that talking about gut health, and I know that I am obviously incredibly passionate about gut health, but I mean, it has been proven over and over, science and studies and are all very, very clear that gut health is literally dictating every aspect of our overall health. And so I think I always feel like our government should, during COVID, I wish they would have just stood up there and told us about how vitamin D is really important for us and how taking certain supplements are important, that we should be taking things that are supporting our immune system ourselves. That is what we should be doing, not avoiding all of these things. And so I feel like as a government, I would love to see us stand up and empower people. I mean, let them know red dye number 3 is still going to be in these products for the next 2 years. And so right now we just have to empower our constituents, our nation, to stay away from these additives, stay away, to try to avoid things, and send the message to the biggest voice is sending, as a consumer, to send messages to these food companies and to, and our grocery stores, to let them know we are only demanding organic products. So I think a lot of it is just the messaging and talking about gut health and how it is so important to our overall health.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, guys, if you want to learn more about, Tina has educated me. If you want to learn more about the groundbreaking work that they do at Just Thrive, go to justthrivehealth.com. They've got this award-winning probiotic that I love taking every day. It's made a big difference. They also have some clinically proven immune and brain support supplements like Focus, Memory. I love the Just Calm. I'm biased, but Just Thrive will help you feel better every day. And the research that they've done in the clinical trial, that you're actually taking stuff that's getting through your stomach and going where it's supposed to go. So take control of your health today. Go to Just Thrive Health. Use promo code SPICER to save 20% off your first order. Guys, thanks for being with us. We have an exciting week coming your way. Next week, we're going to keep breaking down all of the Trump agenda, the appointees, the hearings, the nominations, the executive orders. This is your place to be. My latest newsletter came out today. Go to SeanSpicer.com to sign up. It's free. Always welcome the VIP members, but go to SeanSpicer.com, sign up for that free newsletter. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.